Our final speaker for the keynote before we get to the awards presentation this afternoon is Jon Wellinghoff, who was named chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission by President Obama in March 2009. Chairman Wellinghoff is an energy law specialist with more than 30 years' experience in the field. Before joining FERC, he was in private practice and focused on renewable energy efficiency, and distributed generation. He was the primary author of the Nevada Renewable Portfolio Standard Act and worked with clients to develop renewable portfolio standards in 6 other states. The chairman is considered an expert on the state renewable portfolio process and has lectured extensively on the subject. Please join me in welcoming Chairman Jon Wellinghoff.
Thank you for that introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here today. A little tough, though, hitting cleanup for the lineup we've had ahead of me here. First of all, how many of you saw 60 Minutes, saw the Bloom box on 60 Minutes? I understand they're going to be selling them down the exhibit area later on. We can get one of those and we can all go home. We'll all be done with Bloom box. For those of you who didn't see it, there's a piece on 60 Minutes last week that talks about what appears to be a fuel cell, and apparently a number of very large companies, Google and eBay and others, have purchased these fuel cells to test them out, and there was a lot of hype about it as it being sort of the newest, greatest, latest energy thing, cheaper than coal and easier to run and, so on and so forth, although it does run on natural gas. So ultimately there's a little issue with carbon and a few other issues. So I think renewables will be around for a while, and we're going to talk about renewables. But I was really fascinated by, again, my predecessors in sentient buildings. Huh, Roger? That's pretty interesting. Well, I'm going to talk about not only renewables, but I'm going to talk about the entire system, and the system has how it works in this country and what we need to do in this country to move it forward. But again, that's very hard to do with what Roger's done here in Austin, Texas, and what the city of Austin's done. They truly are leaders in the nation. And what Chairman Smithman and the Texas PUC and ERCOT has done here, they are truly leaders in the nation. So we could only aspire in this nation to be at the level that Texas is now with respect to the advances in renewable energy and what has been done with respect to those systems. But we do have tremendous potential in this country, and we need to understand the level of potential in this country. We have in the Midwest, excluding the Texas area, but if we just talk about from the Dakotas on through Oklahoma, we probably have 600 gigawatts of wind energy there. If we talk about Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and Montana, we have another 300 gigawatts of wind energy. Offshore on the Atlantic coast, my friend Ken Salazar, the Secretary of Interior, says we have 800 gigawatts of wind energy, another several hundred gigawatts of potential wind energy in the Great Lakes. We certainly have enough wind energy in this country to fulfill our needs if we can integrate it fully and reliably into the system, and that's something I'm going to talk about in a moment. We can look at, of course, new wind additions in this country, and you can see how rapidly they've been advancing. These were, for the 2009 numbers, the numbers to the far left on this slide, our initial estimates that, in fact, because of the economy, we were going to decrease the amount of wind installed in that 2009 period. And as it turns out, if you look at the actual numbers that I've just put in, we actually increased substantially above even our 2008 figures, where in 2009 we added some 9,900 megawatts of new wind energy throughout this country, and we're now over 35,000 megawatts of new wind energy. That's more wind energy added than certainly any new coal systems, and of course the new nuclear systems as well. And I think I have to agree with my friend Roger Duncan that nuclear, I think it does have promise in the sense that it is a low carbon resource, but right now it's just too expensive. It's just going to be too expensive, I think, to ultimately be something that we can rely on in the near-term future. There may be breakthroughs, and we certainly do need to continue research and development, but ultimately I think from a standpoint of costs, renewables are ultimately going to be not only the low carbon but the low cost resources. If we look at geothermal systems, an area that I'm very familiar with. I represented a number of geothermal companies prior to my coming on the commission in 2006. Tremendous potential. We have 50 to 60 gigawatts of geothermal systems in the western United States that are developable. And there is a new geothermal type area that's been recently sort of discovered and discussed. Southern Methodist University has done some analysis here in Texas and Louisiana and it's determined they think there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 gigawatts of what they call geothermal geopressure zones, where you really, in essence, have hot water in areas where you have deep wells of oil and gas drilling that can be, in fact, developable, where you can bring up that hot water and take it through a Rankine cycle type low-temperature engine that will produce electricity. So there's tremendous potential there for geothermal systems. And of course, geothermal can be expanded beyond the electric area as well. There's geothermal heat pumps that, of course, are viable throughout this country, where we can have low-cost heating and cooling as well. Then the other renewable resource is central solar. I actually liked Chairman Smitherman's slides, because one of the slides he showed on solar was actually this project, and this project is not in, proud to say, not in Texas, but is in Nevada. This is the project at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. It's about a 14 megawatt solar PV system. There's a system that I actually worked on. One of my clients, Powerlight, put this system in Nellis Air Force Base, and I helped negotiate the contracts on it. Again, one of the largest PV systems in the world. And I am proud to say, being from Nevada on a per capita basis has the highest amount of solar per capita, has the highest amount of geothermal per capita as well. So solar certainly in the desert Southwest, Texas, throughout New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, we have, again, enough solar potential there to literally thousands of gigawatts of solar that could be developed and could ultimately be utilized to provide for our needs in this country. But what we have to remember with respect to all these resources is what Bennett Johnson said, who was at one time the chairman of the Senate Energy Committee, that transmission is the Achilles heel of renewable energy. These renewable energy resources are at remote, specific, designated locations where the wind blows, where the solar and sun shines, and two other resources I didn't mention here but are also very viable and abundant in our country are hydro resources, including hydrokinetic resources, in-stream and offshore resources that are currently being developed by a number of firms. And FERC, our agency, permits those hydrokinetic resources. We currently have, for example, over 3,000 permit applications in the Mississippi River alone for hydrokinetic energy development there. And another renewable resource, of course, is biomass. But all of these are remote from loads. They're not next to loads. You can't move a pipeline there. You can't move a rail car there to move the fuel to site a generating plant near the load. So you have to transmit the power from the resource. You have to get it there. And this issue of transmission is going to be the make or break in this country of whether or not we can develop these resources that need to be developed to lower our carbon footprint, to revitalize our economy, and to get this country going where we need to get it going. So, in starting on transmission, I will start out with this slide you saw of ERCOT. And I'm doing that because I've got a couple of things that I want to say about it that actually Barry, I think, didn't say. One was, he mentioned this, but I think this is important to re-emphasize again. Texas did this by creating competitive renewable energy zones, and I emphasize the word competitive. It's absolutely important that if we are going to make renewables work in this country, that we set up competitive markets, competitive systems. Texas has a competitive system. You have ERCOT, you have a competitive system not only for the marketing of electricity, but you have a competitive system here that your commission put forward for the development of transmission. That's extremely important. It's something we're struggling with at FERC. We're trying to work to do this as best we can. We oversee, of course, not Texas with respect to competitive wholesale markets, but we oversee 6 other markets, including SPP